I watched Marcus pace across our living room, phone pressed to his ear, that familiar crease between his brows that used to make me want to smooth it away with my thumb. Now it just made me want to laugh. Yes, I understand the cancellation fee, he said, voice tight. But this is an emergency. My business partner's daughter is getting married, and they need the grand ballroom at the Rosewood Estate for October 15th. October 15th. Our wedding date. The date I'd circled in red on every calendar, the date I'd dreamed about for 3 years. Except this time, I'd circled it for an entirely different reason. I took a sip of my coffee, expensive, imported, the kind I never would have bought in my first life because Marcus always said it was wasteful, and waited. The mug was warm against my palms. Real. Solid. Proof that this wasn't another dying fever dream, that I'd actually been given a second chance. 3 months ago, I'd woken up in this same apartment, in this same bed, 1 year before my original wedding date. 1 year before the day that had started my descent into hell. My body had been younger, my face unmarked by the stress and tears that had aged me a decade in my previous life. But my mind remembered everything. I remembered Marcus canceling our venue for Vivian Chen, daughter of his business partner. I remembered believing his promises that we'd find somewhere even better, somewhere more us. I remembered the smaller venue, the rushed ceremony, the way Vivian had attended in a dress more extravagant than mine, smiling that secret smile. I remembered the year after that, watching Marcus's company soar while mine struggled. I remembered the way he'd slowly stopped coming home. The lipstick on his collar that wasn't my shade, the late-night business meetings. I remembered finding them together in our bed. Her bed, really. She'd already been living in the penthouse apartment Marcus had secretly bought, the one he'd filled, with the furniture I'd picked out for our future home. I remembered the divorce that had left me with nothing, because I'd been stupid enough to sign a prenup his lawyer had crafted, one that excluded me from any business interest, even though I'd given up my own career to support his. And I remembered the final humiliation, watching them get married at the Rosewood Estate in the grand ballroom on what should have been my 5th anniversary with Marcus. I'd driven past that day, unable to help myself, and I'd sat in my beat-up Honda across the street from the estate where I should have been celebrating 5 years of marriage, watching them take vows in the venue that should have been mine. 6 months after that, I'd been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. The stress, the doctor had said, sometimes the body just gives up. I'd died alone in a hospice bed, my parents already gone, my friends long since chosen Marcus's side, with nothing but regrets and rage. But somehow, impossibly, I'd woken up, 1 year before it all began. 1 year to change everything. Marcus hung up the phone and turned to me, and I saw it. The guilt barely concealed beneath a mask of regret. The same expression he'd worn in my first life when he'd broken the news. Emma, he started, and I held up my hand. Let me guess, I said, keeping my voice light. They need our venue, the Rosewood Estate, October 15th, and Richard Chen is your business partner, so you need to give it to them. His eyes widened. How did you? Lucky guess. I set down my coffee mug. It's fine, Marcus. Cancel it. He blinked. In my first life, I'd cried. I'd begged. I'd made him promise we'd find somewhere better, and then I'd spent weeks calling every venue in the city, only to end up at a Holiday Inn conference room that smelled like rubber chicken and desperation. You're okay with this? He asked carefully. Of course. I smiled at him, the same smile I'd given him 1,000 times, before when I'd still believed he loved me. We'll find somewhere else. Something more intimate, right? More us? Relief flooded his face, and something else, something that looked almost like triumph. Exactly, something more personal. The Rosewood is so stuffy anyway. This could be better. Absolutely, I agreed, already thinking about the real reason I was being so accommodating. Because 3 weeks ago, I'd flown to Las Vegas with Daniel Westbrook, the man who, in my first life, had been nothing more than Marcus's quiet, unassuming competitor. The man Marcus had always dismissed as not a real threat. In my first life, I'd barely known Daniel existed until after my divorce, when I'd read about his company going public and making him a billionaire. I'd seen his picture in Forbes and thought absently that he was handsome in an understated way, nothing like Marcus's aggressive charisma. This time, I'd made it my business to know everything about Daniel Westbrook. I'd shown Icky. Up at his office 6 weeks after my rebirth, walked past his assistant without an appointment, and sat down across from his desk like I owned the place. "Mr. Westbrook," I'd said, "I have information about Marcus Sterling's upcoming project that I think you'll find very valuable. And in exchange, I have a proposition for you." He'd looked at me with those sharp gray eyes, intelligent and assessing, and I'd known I'd made the right choice. "I'm listening," he'd said. I'd told him everything, every dirty dealing of Marcus's that I'd learned about too late in my first life, every corner he was planning to cut, every lie he was going to tell investors. I'd laid out Marcus Sterling's entire playbook, because in my first life I'd been his fiancé, his confidant, the person he'd bragged to about his business genius, right up until he'd decided I was more useful discarded. Daniel had listened without interruption, his expression never changing. When I finished, he'd leaned back in his chair. "And your proposition?" he'd asked. "Marry me," I'd said. To his credit, he'd barely reacted. "Explain." "You need a wife for that conservative board you're trying to impress. The Harper Industries merger, they're traditional, family-oriented, and they've already rejected 2 of your previous acquisition offers because John Harper thinks you're too much of a lone wolf. You need to prove you're stable, committed, someone they can trust with their legacy company." His eyes had narrowed slightly, the only tell that I'd surprised him. "You've done your research." "I have a vested interest in seeing Marcus Sterling fail," I'd said simply. "And you're the only person in this city with the resources and motivation to make that happen. So here's my offer. I marry you, help you close the Harper deal, and give you every piece of insider information I have on Marcus's business. In exchange, you help me destroy him." "Why not just sell me the information? Why marriage?" I'd smiled then, and I'd seen him tense slightly at whatever he'd seen in my expression. "Because when Marcus realizes he's losing everything, I want him to know exactly who's responsible. I want him to see me thriving while he crashes and burns, and I can't do that as your informant. I need to be your wife." Daniel had been quiet for a long moment, studying me. Then he'd stood, walked to his bar cart, and poured 2 glasses of scotch. He'd handed me one. "1 year," he'd said. "We stay married for 1 year, see this through. After that, quiet divorce, we both walk away with what we want. I'll have Harper Industries, you'll have your revenge, and we'll part as business partners." "Deal," I'd said, and we'd shaken on it. 2 weeks later, we'd flown to Vegas under the radar. His private jet, a quick ceremony at a chapel that actually had style and class, nothing like the Elvis-themed disasters you see in movies. We'd signed a prenup that was fair to both of us, had a surprisingly pleasant dinner at Joel Robuchon, and flown back the next morning. I'd been wearing my wedding ring from Daniel on a chain around my neck ever since, hidden under my clothes, waiting for exactly this moment. Marcus's phone rang again. He glanced at the screen and smiled. That particular smile he reserved for people he was trying to impress. "Richard," he answered. "Yes, I just got off the phone with the Rosewood. It's all set." No, Emma was very understanding. "Of course, we're happy to help Vivian's special day go smoothly." Vivian. Even hearing her name made my jaw clench. In my first life, I'd tried so hard to like her, to see her as just my fiancé's business partner's daughter, nothing more. I'd ignored every red flag, every too long glance between them, every time Marcus had canceled our plans because Richard needs me to escort Vivian to this event. I'd been so stupid. So trusting, never again. Marcus hung up and came over to me, pressing a kiss to my forehead. The gesture that used to make me melt now made my skin crawl. "Thank you for being so understanding about this, Em," he said. "I know the Rosewood was your dream venue." "It's fine," I said, and it was. Because in 3 months, when Marcus finally got around to looking for a new venue for our wedding, the wedding I had no intention of having, he was going to find that every decent location in the city was mysteriously booked. Daniel had helped me with that too. A few strategic calls from Westbrook Industries, some generous deposits at every venue worth having, all under shell company names. Marcus would scramble, increasingly desperate, and I would play the understanding fiancé right up until the moment I destroyed him. I need to head to the office, Marcus said, already reaching for his jacket. Richard wants to discuss the Chen Medical acquisition over lunch. The Chen Medical acquisition. The deal that would make Marcus's company explode in value, or would have if I hadn't already told Daniel every single detail about the properties Marcus was planning to acquire, the investors he was courting, the timeline he was working with. Daniel had moved faster, quieter, and he'd already secured 2 of the 3 key properties Marcus needed. By the time Marcus realized what was happening, it would be too late. Have a good lunch, I said sweetly. Tell Vivian I said congratulations on her engagement. Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or suspicion. But he covered it quickly. Will do, he said, and left. The moment the door closed behind him, I pulled out the chain around my neck and looked at the ring Daniel had put on my finger in that Vegas chapel. It was beautiful. A simple platinum band with a single perfect diamond, elegant and understated. Nothing like the ostentatious rock Marcus had given me, the one I'd pawned in my first life to pay for my cancer treatments. This ring was still on my finger when I died. I'd refused to take it off, even when the hospice nurses had gently suggested it might be more comfortable. It had been my last act of defiance, my final fuck you to Marcus Sterling. I'd died wearing another man's ring, even if I'd never gotten to actually be that man's wife. This time, I actually was that man's wife. I pulled out my phone and texted Daniel. He took the bait, venue canceled. The response came back almost immediately. Perfect. Dinner tonight? We should discuss the timeline for the Harper meeting. I smiled. Daniel and I had settled into an unexpectedly comfortable partnership over the past few weeks. Our marriage was purely business, of course. We maintained separate bedrooms in his penthouse, interacted mostly through text and occasional dinners to coordinate our plans. But there was something almost pleasant about working with someone who was as dedicated to a goal as I was. And if I'd noticed that he was actually quite attractive when he smiled, or that his dry sense of humor made me laugh in a way I hadn't in years, well, that was irrelevant. Sounds good, I texted back. I'll bring the Harper family research I've compiled. Because while Marcus thought I was a pretty accessory who'd given up my marketing career to support his dreams, I'd actually been building something of my own. In my first life, I'd let my career die to focus on being the perfect fiancée, the perfect wife. I'd believed Marcus when he said my little marketing job didn't matter compared to his important business ventures. This time, I'd kept my job. More than that, I'd leveraged every piece of industry knowledge I had from my previous life to make myself invaluable to my company. I'd pitched campaigns I knew would succeed, avoided the mistakes I'd made before, and in 3 months, I'd gone from mid-level manager to senior director. And I'd made it my personal mission to learn everything about the Harper family and their company because I knew that's what Daniel needed. That's what would make our partnership work. My phone rang. My mother. I answered, already bracing myself. Hi, Mom. Emma, sweetheart, I just heard from Marcus's mother that you gave up the Rosewood estate for Vivian Chen's wedding. In my first life, this phone call had ended with me in tears, my mother telling me I was being too much of a pushover, that I needed to stand up for myself. And I'd defended Marcus, insisted he was just trying to be a good partner, that we'd find somewhere even better. My mother had been right, of course. She'd never liked Marcus, had seen through his charm from the beginning. But I'd been too in love, or too stupid, to listen. She'd died 2 years into my marriage, a sudden heart attack. I'd often wondered if the stress of watching her daughter's life fall apart had contributed to that. If I could have saved her by being stronger, smarter, less of a doormat. It's fine, Mom, I said. Actually, it works out perfectly. Perfectly? Emma, that was your dream venue. Mom. I interrupted her gently. I need to tell you something, but you have to promise not to tell anyone, especially not Marcus or his family. Silence, then. What's going on? I'm married, I said. I've been married for 3 weeks. To someone else. The sound she made was somewhere between a gasp and a laugh. You're what? His name is Daniel Westbrook. He's CEO of Westbrook Industries. And before you ask, yes, I'm sure. Yes, I know what I'm doing. And no, I haven't told Marcus yet because I'm waiting for the right moment. Emma Jane Carter, my mother said slowly. Start from the beginning. Now. So I told her. Not about the rebirth. That would be too much, even for my open-minded mother. But about realizing Marcus wasn't who I thought he was. About seeing the signs of his affair with Vivian. About making a calculated decision to protect myself. And I told her about Daniel. About the business arrangement that had turned into something like friendship. About feeling, for the first time in years, like I was in control of my own life. When I finished, my mother was quiet for a long moment. Is he good to you? She finally asked. This, Daniel? I thought about the way Daniel had helped me secure the venue bookings without being asked, anticipating what I'd need. The way he'd listened to my ideas about the Harper pitch without dismissing them, actually incorporating my suggestions. The way he'd quietly had his lawyer review my employment contract and point out 3 clauses that were screwing me over, then helped me negotiate a better deal. Yes, I said. He's good to me. Then I'm happy for you, baby. She paused. When do I get to meet him? Soon, I promised. I want to get through this Harper deal first, and then I'm going to let Marcus know that I don't need him to find me a new venue. Because I'm not marrying him. I want to be there for that, my mother said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. I want to see his face. Front row seat, I promised. I'll make sure of it. We talked for a few more minutes, my mother extracting promises that I'd be careful, that I'd bring Daniel to dinner soon, that I wouldn't do anything stupid. I agreed to all of it, feeling lighter than I had in years. In my first life, my mother had died thinking I was trapped in a loveless marriage, her daughter wasted on a man who didn't deserve her. This time, she'd live to see me happy. I'd make sure of it. That evening, I met Daniel at Maria, the upscale Italian restaurant that had become our regular meeting spot. It was public enough to seem normal, but private enough for discreet business discussions. He was already seated when I arrived, reviewing something on his tablet. He looked up when I approached, and something in his expression shifted. Warmed, just slightly. Emma, he said, standing to pull out my chair. Always the gentleman, despite our unconventional arrangement. Daniel. I sat, accepting the menu from the waiter. The Dover sole is excellent here. You've been doing your research on more than just the Harpers, he said dryly. I believe in being thorough. We ordered the Dover sole for me, the Branzino for him, and then Daniel pulled out a folder. The Harper meeting is set for 3 weeks from now, he said. John Harper, his wife Catherine, and their son James will all be there. They want to meet you. Me? You're my wife. They want to see that I'm a family man, remember? That's the entire point of this arrangement. Right. The arrangement. Sometimes I almost forgot that's what this was. Of course, I said. What do I need to know? Daniel slid the folder across to me. Inside were dossiers on each Harper family member, their backgrounds, interests, even their favorite charities. John Harper is old school, Daniel said. He built Harper Industries from nothing, and he's very protective of his legacy. He wants to make sure whoever takes over will respect that legacy, not just strip the company for parts. And you plan to respect it? I plan to expand it, Daniel corrected. Harper Industries has strong fundamentals, but they're stuck in the past. They need modernization, new markets, updated technology. I can give them that while maintaining the core values John built the company on. I skimmed through the documents and Catherine Harper volunteers at the Children's Hospital Foundation. James recently got engaged to Alexandra Morrison, daughter of the Morrison Hotel chain family. You're quick, Daniel observed. I'm motivated. I looked up at him. What do you need from me at this meeting? Be yourself, he said simply. Smart, capable, charming. Show them that I'm not just some corporate raider who lives for the deal. Show them I'm someone who values partnership, family, legacy. But you are someone who lives for the deal, I pointed out. He smiled slightly. Maybe, but I'm also someone who keeps my word. and I'm learning that partnership can be valuable. Something passed between us then, a moment of understanding. This arrangement had started as pure business, but somewhere along the way, we'd become actual partners, maybe even friends. Our food arrived and we ate while discussing strategy. I shared my research on the Harpers. I discovered that Catherine was particularly passionate about arts education, and that James was struggling to prove himself worthy of taking over the family business someday. We could offer to fund an arts program through the Harper Foundation, I suggested. Show that we're thinking about the company's philanthropic legacy, not just the bottom line. Daniel considered this. That's good, really good. John would appreciate that kind of long-term thinking. And I could talk to James, I continued. Make it clear that you're not looking to push him out, that there's a place for him in the new structure. He's afraid he'll lose his inheritance, his purpose. We can address that head on. Daniel was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. You've really thought this through. Like I said, I'm motivated. I paused. Daniel, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you agree to this? To marrying me? You could have just bought the information about Marcus, hired a consultant to help with the Harper deal. Why take on a wife, even temporarily? He was quiet for a moment, swirling his wine glass. Because, he said finally, you walked into my office with nothing but courage and a plan, and you asked for exactly what you needed. No games, no manipulation, just honest transaction. I respected that. He met my eyes. And because I've spent years watching Marcus Sterling operate, seeing the way he uses people and throws them away, if I could help take him down while simultaneously solving my own problem, that seemed like a win-win. You don't like him, I said. It wasn't a question. I despise him, Daniel said flatly. He's everything wrong with this industry, all flash, no substance. He cheats, he lies, he takes credit for other people's work, and he gets away with it because he's charming and people want to believe his promises. He hurt you, I realized. Professionally, I mean. Daniel's jaw tightened. 3 years ago, we were both bidding on a tech startup. Brilliant company, incredible potential. Marcus found out that the founder's mother was sick, needed expensive treatment. He offered to pay for it, but only if the founder sold to him instead of me. Made himself look like a hero while essentially bribing his way to the deal. What happened? The founder sold to Marcus, of course. His mother got her treatment, and 6 months later, Marcus had stripped the company for parts and fired everyone, including the founder. The technology Marcus had promised to develop, he shelved it and sold the patents to a competitor. I felt sick. That was exactly the kind of thing Marcus would do. Generous in public, ruthless in private. The founder, I asked, couldn't find work for 2 years because Marcus had blackballed him in the industry. Said he was difficult to work with. Last I heard, he'd moved to Seattle and was working for Amazon for a fraction of what he's worth. We sat in silence for a moment. I'm going to enjoy destroying him, I said quietly. So am I, Daniel agreed. And Emma, when you're ready to tell him about us, about the marriage, I want to be there. I want to see his face. I smiled. Deal. The next few weeks passed in a blur of careful planning. I played the role of devoted fiancé perfectly, listening to Marcus complain about how hard it was to find a new venue, sympathizing when he vented about work stress that was entirely caused by Daniel quietly outmaneuvering him at every turn, being supportive when he had to cancel our dates because of urgent business. Meanwhile, I was busy, learning everything I could about Harper Industries, preparing for the meeting that would secure Daniel's acquisition and cement our partnership. I attended charity events with Catherine Harper, carefully building a relationship. I had coffee with James Harper's fiancée, Alexandra, bonding over wedding planning and subtly planting seeds about how wonderful it would be to have Daniel as a business partner, someone who valued family and legacy. I was also watching Marcus's world slowly crumble piece by piece. Daniel had acquired the first 2 properties Marcus needed for the Chen medical expansion. Marcus had responded by trying to acquire the 3rd property at an inflated price, overextending his company's resources. Daniel had let him, knowing it would leave Marcus vulnerable. Then Daniel had quietly approached two of Marcus's biggest investors, the ones funding the Chen medical deal, and showed them a more attractive opportunity, a stake in Westbrook Industries' medical tech division. The investors had jumped ship, leaving Marcus scrambling to find replacement funding. And through it all, Marcus had no idea who was behind his troubles. He thought it was just bad luck, bad timing. He had no idea his fiancée was feeding every bit of strategic information to his biggest competitor. The Harper meeting was scheduled for a Friday evening at their estate in Greenwich. Daniel picked me up in his Tesla, understated wealth, exactly the right message for the Harpers. Nervous? He asked as we drove. Should I be? No, he said as some. You've prepared better than anyone I've ever worked with. John Harper is going to love you. And if he doesn't, then we'll pivot. We always do. He glanced at me. We make a good team, Emma. We do, I agreed and realized I meant it. The Harper estate was stunning. Old money, tastefully maintained, the kind of place that spoke of generations of success. We were greeted by a butler, an actual butler, and led to a formal sitting room where the Harper family waited. John Harper was exactly as I'd imagined, late 60s, silver hair, sharp eyes that missed nothing. Catherine was elegant and warm, immediately putting me at ease. James was nervous, trying hard to project confidence. Mr. and Mrs. Westbrook, John said, shaking our hands. Thank you for coming. Mrs. Westbrook. I'd heard it a few times now, but it still gave me a small thrill. I was Mrs. Westbrook, not Mrs. Sterling. I'd never be Mrs. Sterling. We settled into small talk. Catherine asked about our wedding. I described the Vegas ceremony honestly, framing it as spontaneous and romantic. James asked about our plans for the future. I let Daniel take the lead, supporting him naturally. John asked about my work. I described my marketing role, the campaigns I'd led, careful not to overshadow Daniel, but showing I was capable in my own right. Over dinner, the conversation turned to business. I'll be frank, Daniel, John said. I've had a lot of offers for Harper Industries. Most of them from people who just want to carve up my life's work and sell it off for parts. Why should I trust you? Because I don't want to carve it up, Daniel said. I want to build on what you've created. Harper Industries has incredible fundamentals, strong relationships with suppliers, loyal employees, a reputation for quality. Those things are worth more than any asset sale. But you're losing ground to competitors who have embraced new technology, new markets. I can help you modernize while maintaining your core values. And how do I know you'll keep your word once the papers are signed? This was where I came in. Mr. Harper, I said gently, may I share something? He nodded, his attention fully on me. My mother built a small business from nothing, a boutique marketing firm. She spent 30 years building relationships, developing a reputation for integrity. 3 years ago, she had a health scare, and she considered selling. She had offers from larger firms, people who promised to maintain her legacy. I paused, making eye contact with John. I could see he was listening, really listening. But she turned them all down, I continued, because she didn't trust them, because promises are easy to make and hard to keep. She ended up passing the business to her senior employees instead, people who'd worked with her for years, who understood what she'd built. Wise woman, Catherine murmured. She is, I agreed. And she taught me that legacy matters, that what you build is worth protecting. So when Daniel and I talked about the Harper acquisition, I asked him the same question you're asking now. Why should you be trusted? I looked at Daniel, then back at John. And he gave me an answer that I believed. He said that Harper Industries represents everything he wishes the business world still values: quality, integrity, long-term thinking. He said he wanted to prove that you can be successful without being ruthless, that you can grow a company without sacrificing its soul. Pretty words, John said, but his tone was thoughtful, not dismissive. They are, Daniel agreed, sighing. But I can back them up. I've drafted an integration plan that maintains Harper's current management structure, protects employee benefits, and includes a 5-year commitment to your philanthropic initiatives, including, he glanced at Catherine, a new endowment for arts education programs in underserved communities. Catherine's eyes lit up. Really? Really, I confirmed. Daniel and I both believe that a company's value isn't just measured in profit, it's measured in impact. We want Harper Industries to continue making the kind of impact you've built your reputation on. The conversation continued for another hour, getting into specifics, but I could see the shift. John was no longer testing us, he was negotiating with us. We'd passed the test. By the time we left, we had a handshake. Agreement. The lawyers would handle the details, but the deal was done. In the car on the way back, Daniel was quiet. That story about your mother's business, he said finally. Was it true? Every word, I said. She sold it last year, actually. To her employees, just like I said, it was the right choice. You were brilliant in there, Daniel said. The way you connected with John, with Catherine, the way you positioned us as partners, not just in business, but in values. That's what sealed it. We are partners, I pointed out, in business and in this arrangement. It wasn't hard to be convincing. He pulled up to his building, our building technically, though I still thought of it as his. We'd been living together for weeks now, but carefully, maintaining our separate spaces, our separate lives, except they weren't feeling as separate anymore. Come have a drink with me? Daniel asked. To celebrate, I should have said no, should have gone to my room, maintained the boundaries we'd established. But I was riding high on the success of the evening, on the knowledge that we'd pulled it off, that Daniel was going to get Harper Industries, and I was one step closer to destroying Marcus. One drink, I agreed. We sat in his living room, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, expensive scotch and crystal glasses, the kind of moment that should have felt surreal but somehow just felt right. To partnership, Daniel said, raising his glass. To partnership, I echoed, and we drank. Can I ask you something? Daniel said after a moment. Of course. What exactly did Marcus do to you? I know he's been unfaithful, I know he's used you, but there's something else, isn't there? Something that makes you this determined to destroy him completely. I looked down at my glass, watching the amber liquid catch the light. How could I explain? How could I tell him about dying alone? About the cancer that had eaten me from the inside out? About the way Marcus had abandoned me when I was at my lowest? I couldn't tell him about the rebirth, but I could tell him the truth of what I'd seen, what I knew was coming. In another version of my life, I said slowly, I stayed with Marcus. I married him, gave up everything for him, and he destroyed me. Not all at once, but slowly, systematically. He isolated me from my friends, from my career, from everything that made me who I was. And then, when I had nothing left, when I was completely dependent on him, he left me for Vivian. Daniel's hand tightened on his glass, but he didn't interrupt. I can see the future with him so clearly, I continued. I see myself getting smaller and smaller, disappearing into his shadow until there's nothing left of Emma Carter. And I refuse to let that happen. So yes, I want to destroy him because he deserves it and because it's the only way I can be sure I'll never become that version of myself. You could have just left him, Daniel said quietly. You didn't have to marry me, didn't have to go to all this trouble. Yes, I did, I said. Because leaving wouldn't be enough. He'd move on, find another woman to use and discard, keep being successful and charming and cruel. I want him to fail. I want him to lose everything, the way I would have lost everything with him. I want him to know what it feels like. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, studying me. You're kind of terrifying, you know that? He said finally. I looked up at him, expecting judgment, but he was smiling slightly, and there was something in his eyes that looked almost like admiration. Good, I said, yes, he. Marcus thought I was harmless, sweet, supportive, easy to manipulate. That's why he never saw me coming. I won't make that mistake, Daniel said. Then, softer. I'm glad you're on my side, Emma. Me too, I said. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, sipping our scotch, looking out at the city lights. It was nice, I realized. Just being here with him, no agenda, no performance. Just two people who understood each other. I should go to bed, I said eventually, standing up. Big day tomorrow. I'm having lunch with Alexandra Morrison to discuss the Harper Morrison wedding collaboration opportunities. Daniel raised an eyebrow. You're still working the Harper angle? Always, I said. The more integrated we become with their family network, the more secure the acquisition. Besides, I like Alexandra. She's smart, ambitious, not content to just be a rich man's wife. We have a lot in common. I'm sure you do, Daniel said, and there was something warm in his voice that made me pause. Good night, Daniel, I said. Good night, Emma. I went to my room, but I didn't sleep for a long time. I kept thinking about the evening, about how natural it had felt to present ourselves as a married couple, about the way Daniel had looked at me when I was talking to the Harpers. This was just business, I reminded myself, a temporary arrangement, 1 year, and then we'd part ways. I had a goal, destroy Marcus Sterling, and Daniel was helping me achieve it. But sometimes in moments like these, it was easy to forget that none of this was real. 2 days later, Marcus finally called about the venue situation. I have bad news, he said, and I could hear the frustration in his voice. Every venue I've called is booked. Everything, the Regency, the Plaza, even that hotel in Brooklyn I thought was a long shot, all booked for October 15th. That's so strange, I said, carefully neutral. October is usually a popular month, but this seems excessive. I know, it's like someone booked everything on purpose. He laughed, dismissing the idea even as he spoke it. Anyway, I was thinking, what if we postpone? Push the wedding to next spring? Give us more time to find the perfect place. In my first life, I'd agreed to this eagerly, grateful that he was still willing to marry me at all. The wedding had been pushed to May, then to August, then finally to the following October. Each time Marcus had an excuse. Work was too busy. The perfect venue hadn't opened up. His mother thought spring weddings were bad luck. I'd walk down the aisle at that Holiday Inn in a dress I'd bought on sale to marry a man who was already planning to leave me. I'd been so relieved that he'd finally kept his promise that I hadn't questioned why Vivian Chen had been seated in the front row, why she'd worn white to my wedding, why Marcus had spent half the reception talking to her father about business. Marcus, I said carefully, can I ask you something? Of course, babe. Are you actually planning to marry me? Silence, then. What? Of course I am. Why would you even ask that? Because we've been engaged for 3 years. Because you canceled our venue for Vivian's wedding. Because every time we get close to actually setting a date, something comes up. Emma, that's not fair, isn't it? Kept my voice calm, reasonable. I'm not angry, Marcus. I just want to know the truth. If you're having second thoughts about us, about getting married, I need you to tell me. I deserve that much. I'm not having second thoughts, he said. But there was something in his tone, guilt maybe, or fear at being caught. Work has just been stressful, and with the Chen medical deal falling apart. Falling apart? We lost some investors, he admitted. I can't get into details, but it's been a nightmare. The last thing I need is wedding stress on top of everything else. I see, I said. So, postponing the wedding would make things easier for you. For both of us, he said quickly. Less stress, more time to plan something really special. Marcus, I said quietly, I don't think I want to postpone. What? I think if we're going to get married, we should just do it. No big venue, no stress. Let's go to City Hall, make it official, and then we can have a big party later when work calms down. The silence that followed was deafening. City Hall, Marcus said finally. Emma, we can't just go to City Hall. What would people think? People who love us would think we couldn't wait to be married, I said. People who don't love us. Why do we care what they think? My mother would be devastated. Your mother has been planning our wedding for 3 years without actually asking me what I want, I interrupted. Marcus, I'm trying to tell you something important. I want to marry you, not have a wedding, not throw a party, marry you. If you want the same thing, let's just do it. And if you don't, I let the sentence hang. Emma, you're being ridiculous, Marcus said, and there it was. The edge in his voice, the dismissiveness I'd learned to ignore in my first life. We're not going to City Hall like we're some broke college kids. We're going to have a proper wedding in a proper venue when the timing is right. Okay, I said softly. Then I guess we'll wait for the timing to be right. Thank you for understanding, he said, relief clear in his voice. I knew you'd see reason. Look, I have to run. Meeting with Richard in 10 minutes. Love you. He hung up before I could respond. I set down my phone and smiled, because Marcus had just told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't planning to marry me, at least not anytime soon. He was keeping me on the hook, stringing me along while he positioned himself for whatever he actually wanted. In my first life, that had been Vivian. This time, I suspected it was still Vivian, but also the business advantages of staying engaged to me while pursuing her. The best of both worlds, Marcus Sterling's specialty. Too bad for him, I was already married to someone else. I texted Daniel. Marcus doesn't want to set a wedding date. He's stalling. The response came quickly. Are you surprised? No, I typed back. Just confirming what I already knew. How's the Harper paperwork? Coming? Lawyers are reviewing. Should be finalized next week. And Emma, when you're ready to tell Marcus about us, say the word. I'll clear my schedule. I smiled at my phone. Soon, very soon. The Harper Industries acquisition was finalized on a Tuesday morning. Daniel signed the papers in his lawyer's office, surrounded by a team of attorneys and advisors. While I watched from a chair in the corner, it was done. Daniel now owned Harper Industries, one of the most respected legacy companies in the industry. The press release would go out this afternoon, and by tomorrow morning, everyone would be talking about Daniel Westbrook's brilliant acquisition, his meteoric rise in the business world. And Marcus Sterling, who'd been so focused on his failing Chen Medical deal, would realize he'd been blindsided by a competitor he'd always dismissed as not a real threat. After the lawyers left, Daniel came over to where I was sitting. We did it, he said. You did it, I corrected. I just helped. You did more than help. The Harper family specifically mentioned you in our final negotiations. Catherine said you were exactly the kind of person who should be running major companies. And John said I was lucky to have found a partner who understood the value of legacy. They're not wrong, I said lightly. Daniel held out his hand. Come on, I'm taking you to lunch to celebrate, somewhere expensive and completely unnecessary. My favorite kind of place, I said, taking his hand. He pulled me to my feet, and for a moment we stood close, his hand still holding mine. Something passed between us, that same electric current I'd been trying to ignore for weeks. Daniel, I started, but my phone rang. Marcus. I showed Daniel the screen, and he nodded. Answer it, this should be entertaining. I put it on speaker. Marcus, I said. Emma, have you seen the news? His voice was tight, stressed. What news? Daniel Westbrook just acquired Harper Industries. The announcement just went out. Oh, I kept my voice neutral. That's good for him, I guess. Good for him? Emma, this is a disaster for us. Harper Industries was on my acquisition list, and Westbrook just snatched it out from under me. He's been targeting my deals for months. First the Chen Medical properties, then my investors, now this. It's like he knows exactly what I'm planning. That does seem like quite a coincidence, I agreed, watching Daniel smile. Richard is furious. He thinks I'm losing my edge, that I'm not competitive anymore. And Vivian, he stopped abruptly. Vivian what? I prompted. Nothing, it's just been a stressful day. I'm sure, I said. Well, maybe this is a sign that you should focus on other opportunities. Not every deal is meant to work out. Easy for you to say, Marcus snapped. You don't understand business, Emma. This isn't just about one deal. This is about my reputation, my company's future. If I don't close something big soon, I'm going to lose everything. In my first life, I would have rushed to comfort him, to assure him he was brilliant and capable, and these were just temporary setbacks. I would have absorbed his stress and anxiety, made it my problem to solve. That sounds really hard, I said instead. I'm sorry you're going through this. Is that all you have to say? What would you like me to say, Marcus? I don't know, something supportive, something helpful. God, Emma, sometimes I feel like you don't even care about my career. And there it was. The mask slipping, the real Marcus showing through. The one who saw me as an emotional support animal, not a partner. I do care, I said calmly. But I'm not sure what you want from me. I'm not a business consultant. I'm just your fiancé. Just my fiancé, he repeated. Right. Look, I have to go. I have calls to make, damage control to do. I'll talk to you later. He hung up. I looked at Daniel. He's spiraling. Good, Daniel said. He should be. By the end of the week, his company's stock price will have dropped 15%. By the end of the month, his board will be calling for his resignation. And Vivian? Richard Chen is already distancing himself from the Chen medical deal. He's not going to let his daughter marry someone whose company is failing. My sources tell me he's been having quiet conversations with other potential partners for Vivian. She's for sale to the highest bidder, basically. Just like Marcus thought you were, Daniel said. Except you were never for sale. You just let him think you were. We went to lunch at Per Se, the kind of restaurant where reservations are impossible and the tasting menu costs more than some people's rent. Daniel had reserved the private dining room. This is excessive, I said, looking around at the elegant space, the view of Central Park, the sommelier presenting wine options. We just acquired a major company, Daniel said. Excessive is appropriate. We ordered, or rather we accepted the chef's tasting menu, 11 courses of perfection. And somewhere between the oysters and the Liberty Farm duck, something shifted between us. Maybe it was the champagne or the adrenaline of our success, or simply the fact that we'd been living together for months, working together, planning together. But the careful distance we'd maintained started to crumble. Can I ask you something? I said. And you have to answer honestly. All right, Daniel said cautiously. Do you ever wonder what happens after? After the year is up, after we've achieved our goals? After you have Harper Industries and I've destroyed Marcus? He was quiet for a moment, turning his wine glass in his hands. Yes, he said finally. I wonder about that. And what do you think happens? I think, he said slowly, that depends on what we both want. The agreement was 1 year, and I'll honor that if that's what you choose, but Emma, he reached across the table, took my hand. I've been married before, he said. 5 years ended badly. She wanted the lifestyle, the prestige, not the actual person. When my company hit some rough patches, she left. Took half of everything and married a hedge fund manager within 6 months. I'm sorry, I said, don't be. It taught me to protect myself, to never confuse business convenience with actual connection. He looked at me directly. But this, what we have, it doesn't feel like business convenience anymore. Does it? My heart was racing. No, I admitted. It doesn't. So maybe, Daniel said, when the year is up, we don't end this. Maybe we renegotiate. Turn this arrangement into something real. Daniel? I'm not asking you to decide now, he said quickly. I know you need to finish what you started with Marcus, need to have closure on that part of your life. But when you're ready, when you've done what you need to do, I want you to know that I'd like to keep being your husband. For real this time. I stared at him. This man who'd started as a business transaction and somehow become something more. Something important. Okay, I said. When this is over, when I've dealt with Marcus, we'll talk about it. That's all I'm asking, Daniel said, and he smiled that rare, genuine smile that made him look younger, less guarded. We finished our lunch, but the conversation had changed something between us, made the possibility of a real future feel tangible, achievable. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus's mother. Emma, dear, we need to talk about the wedding. Marcus mentioned you want to go to City Hall? Surely he misunderstood. Let's have lunch this week and discuss proper venues. I showed the text to Daniel. Are you going to tell her? He asked. Not yet, I said, but soon. I think it's almost time. What are you waiting for? I thought about it. The perfect moment. The moment where Marcus is at his lowest, where he thinks things can't get worse. That's when I want him to find out that I was never his to lose. Daniel's eyes gleamed. You really are terrifying. You like it, I said. I really do, he agreed. The perfect moment came 2 weeks later. Marcus's company, Sterling Ventures, had officially lost the Chen medical deal. Richard Chen had publicly withdrawn his support, citing strategic differences, which everyone in the industry knew was code for "you're failing and I don't want to be associated with you." The company's stock had plummeted. Marcus's board of directors had issued a statement calling for new leadership to guide the company through this transitional period. Investors were jumping ship. The business press was running articles about Sterling Ventures' spectacular collapse and Marcus's fall from grace. And through it all, Marcus had been calling me constantly, venting his frustration, his anger, his desperation. I'd listened patiently, offered sympathy, played the supportive fiancé. But I'd also been planning. I'd invited Marcus's mother, his sister, and his closest friends to Sunday brunch at the Westbrook penthouse. I'd told them I had big news about the wedding, that Marcus and I had finally made a decision. Marcus thought I was going to announce that we'd set a new date, that I was going to stand by him through his business troubles. He'd practically begged me to do it, said he needed some good news to share, needed to show people that his personal life was stable even if his professional life was in shambles. I'd agreed sweetly, told him I'd take care of everything. Now, standing in Daniel's living room with its floor-to-ceiling windows and carefully arranged flowers and catered brunch spread, I watched Marcus's family and friends arrive. His mother, Patricia, elegant and cold. His sister, Melissa, who'd never liked me but tolerated me for Marcus's sake. His best friend from college, David, who'd been best man at 3 weddings and would probably be best man at Marcus's wedding to Vivian if that ever happened. Daniel stood beside me, solid and reassuring, his hand warm on the small of my back. Ready? He murmured. So ready, why? I said. Marcus arrived last looking haggard. The stress of the past few weeks had aged him. New lines around his eyes, tension in his jaw, a tightness to his smile that hadn't been there before. He said, kissing my cheek. Thank you for setting this up. I really needed this. Of course, I said. Why don't you get something to eat? I'll make the announcement in a few minutes. I waited until everyone had plates, until they were settled in the living room with mimosas and expensive pastries. Then I stood at the center of the room, Daniel beside me, and cleared my throat. Thank you all for coming, I said. I know Marcus told you I had news about our wedding, and I do, but it's probably not the news you're expecting. Patricia frowned. Emma, dear, what do you mean? I reached up and pulled the chain from around my neck, the one I'd been wearing for months. Daniel's ring caught the light, diamonds sparkling. I mean that I'm already married, I said. I have been for 4 months. To Daniel Westbrook. The silence was absolute. Then everyone started talking at once. Patricia gasped. Melissa stood up, her face red. David looked between me and Marcus with confusion. And Marcus just stared at me, his face draining of color. What? He said faintly. I married Daniel in Las Vegas, I said calmly. In August. We've been living together ever since. That's impossible, Marcus said. You've been with me. We've been planning our wedding. You've been stalling our wedding, I corrected, canceling venues, postponing dates, making excuses. And the whole time, I've been Mrs. Westbrook. But why? Patricia demanded. Marcus, what is she talking about? I think you should ask your son about Vivian Chen, I said pleasantly, about how he canceled our venue for her wedding, about how he's been having an affair with her for the past 2 years, about how he was never actually planning to marry me. He was just keeping me around until he could secure the Chen medical deal, and then he was going to leave me for Richard's daughter. That's not true, Marcus said, but his voice cracked. Isn't it? I pulled out my phone and brought up a folder I'd carefully curated. Screenshots of texts between Marcus and Vivian, emails discussing their secret, photos I'd found in his phone in my first life and had retrieved again from his laptop he foolishly left unlocked. Would you like me to share these with everyone, or would you prefer to tell them yourself? Marcus's face went from white to red. You went through my phone? My computer? You mean the laptop you left open on the kitchen counter with your email pulled up? I said cynically. I couldn't help but notice the message from Vivian about how she couldn't wait to be with you properly once you dealt with the Emma situation. Melissa stood up. Marcus, tell me she's lying. Marcus looked around the room at his family, his friends, all watching him with varying degrees of shock and disgust. It's not what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like, I said. Your son has been using me while planning to leave me for a woman who could advance his career. The only problem is, his career is now in shambles, and I suspect Vivian's interest in him has evaporated along with his company's stock price. This is hard, Patricia said, but she was looking at Marcus with dawning horror. Marcus, tell her she's wrong. He can't, Daniel said, speaking for the first time. Because she's not wrong. Marcus Sterling has been running game on your daughter-in-law for 3 years, all while pursuing a relationship with Vivian Chen. And Emma figured it out, came to me, and we've been systematically dismantling his company ever since. You, Marcus, turned on Daniel, recognition dawning. You're the one who's been sabotaging my deals. The properties, the investors, Harper Industries, that was all you. With Emma's help, Daniel confirmed, see. She gave me your entire playbook, every strategy, every contact, every move you were planning to make. And I used that information to beat you. Every single time. Marcus looked at me and I saw it. The moment he truly understood what I'd done. The moment he realized he'd lost everything. You destroyed my company, he said slowly. You destroyed my life. No, I said. You destroyed your own life when you decided to use me and throw me away. I just made sure you faced consequences for it. I loved you, Marcus said, and he actually sounded sincere. No, you didn't, I said. You loved the idea of me. The supportive fiancé who made you look good, who gave up her career for you, who never questioned or challenged you. But you never loved me as a person, as an equal. And I'm done being someone's accessory. So you married him? Marcus gestured at Daniel. For what, revenge? Initially, yes, I said honestly. Daniel and I had a business arrangement, marriage in exchange for information and mutual benefit. But you know what's funny, Marcus? That business arrangement turned into something real. Daniel actually respects me. He values my opinions, my contributions. He treats me like a partner, not a possession. I looked at Daniel, who was watching me with those steady gray eyes, and I realized it was true. Somewhere along the way, this fake marriage had become the realest relationship I'd ever had. And now, I continued, turning back to Marcus, you get to live with the consequences of your choices. Your company is failing. Your reputation is destroyed. The woman you actually wanted is probably already moving on to her next target. And the woman you thought you could use and discard, she's married to your biggest competitor and she's never been happier. Patricia stood up, her face tight with anger. Marcus Sterling, is what this woman is saying true? Have you been cheating on your fiancé? Mother, answer me. Marcus's shoulders slumped. Yes, he said quietly. Yes, it's true. I've been seeing Vivian, but Emma, I never meant to hurt you. It just happened. It didn't just happen, I interrupted. You made choices. Every time you canceled a date to see her, every time you postponed our wedding, every time you looked me in the eye and lied, those were choices. And now you have to live with them. I walked over to where my purse sat on the side table and pulled out an envelope. These are divorce papers, I said, handing them to Marcus. Not for us, obviously, since we were never married, but I thought you should be prepared. Vivian's father is meeting with his lawyers tomorrow to discuss breaking her engagement to you. Apparently, he's found a more promising prospect for his daughter, someone whose company isn't currently circling the drain. Marcus took the envelope with shaking hands. How do you know that? Because I'm the one who introduced him to the prospect, Daniel said. An Alexandra Morrison's brother, actually. Harvard graduate, trust fund, impeccable pedigree. Richard jumped at the chance to align his family with the Morrison empire. Vivian's going to be just fine. You planned this, Marcus said, looking between us. All of it. The marriage, the business deals, everything. You planned my destruction. Yes, I said simply. And it was incredibly satisfying. Melissa suddenly laughed, a short, sharp bark of sound. Good for you, she said, looking at me with something like respect. I never liked how Marcus treated you. Always thought you were too good for him. Melissa, Patricia said sharply. Oh, come on, Mother. You know it's true. Marcus is spoiled and selfish, and he's been treating women like disposable accessories since college. She turned to me. I'm glad you got out. I'm glad you made him pay. David, who'd been silent this whole time, finally spoke up. Dude, he said to Marcus, you really fucked up. Get out, Marcus said, his voice shaking. All of you, get out of my apartment. Actually, I said, this is Daniel's apartment. You're in the Westbrook penthouse, remember? You're going to need to leave. The look on Marcus's face was everything I'd hoped for. Humiliation, rage, and the dawning realization that he'd lost absolutely everything. He stood up, looked around at his family, his friends, all of them watching him with varying degrees of disappointment and disgust. Then he looked at me. I hope you're happy, he said bitterly. I am, I said honestly. Happier than I've been in years. He left without another word, and I felt something inside me release. A tension I'd been carrying since the moment I'd woken up in my second life. The burden of knowing what was coming, of planning my revenge. It was done, Marcus Sterling. Was finished. And I was free. Patricia approached me, her expression carefully neutral. I'm sorry my son treated you so poorly, she said stiffly. You deserved better. I did, I agreed. And I found it. She left, taking Melissa with her. David gave me an awkward wave and followed them out, and then it was just me and Daniel standing in the wreckage of my former life. That went well, Daniel said dryly. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in what felt like forever. It really did. Any regrets? I thought about it. About Marcus, about the life I could have had with him, about the woman I would have become if I'd stayed. Then I thought about this life, this second chance, this man standing beside me who'd helped me reclaim myself. Not a single one, I said. Daniel smiled, and then he did something that surprised me. He pulled me into his arms, held me close. I'm proud of you, he said quietly. For fighting back, for refusing to be a victim, for taking control of your own story. I held on to him, breathing in his familiar scent, cedar and citrus, and something uniquely him. And I realized that somewhere along the way, this had stopped being about revenge and started being about building something new. Daniel, I said, pulling back to look at him, what you said at Per Se about renegotiating our arrangement, you don't have to answer now, he said quickly. I want to, I interrupted. I want to turn this into something real. Not because of revenge or business deals, but because I actually like being married to you. You make me feel seen, valued, like I matter. And I don't want to give that up when the year is done. His eyes searched mine. Are you sure? You've just ended one engagement, just confronted your ex. You might feel differently once the adrenaline wears off. I won't, I said. I know because I've lived the alternative. I've lived a life where I settled for someone who didn't value me, and it destroyed me. I'm not making that mistake again. You're not a mistake, Daniel. You're the best decision I've ever made. He kissed me then, properly kissed me, not the chaste peck we'd shared at our Vegas wedding or the performative affection we'd shown the Harpers. This was real, urgent, full of months of building tension and growing connection. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. So, he said, a smile playing at his lips, I guess we're really married now. Looks like it, I agreed. Good, he said, because I've been falling for you for months and it's been killing me to pretend this was just business. Me too, I admitted, though I think I was too focused on revenge to fully acknowledge it until now. And now? Now I'm ready to focus on building something instead of destroying it. I took his hand, linked our fingers together. Let's build something great, Daniel. Not just companies and careers, but an actual life. Together. Deal, he said and kissed me. Again. 6 months later, I stood in the same living room where I'd confronted Marcus, but everything was different now. The penthouse had become our home, not Daniel's apartment that I was temporarily occupying, but genuinely ours. My books mixed with his on the shelves, my coffee maker next to his espresso machine in the kitchen, our lives tangled together in ways that felt natural and right. Harper Industries was thriving under Daniel's leadership, the integration everything he'd promised it would be. John Harper called weekly to discuss strategy, and Catherine had become a genuine friend, someone I had lunch with regularly to discuss the arts foundation we'd started together. My own career had taken off. I'd been promoted to VP of marketing at my firm, and I was being headhunted by 3 different major companies. Daniel and I had discussed the possibility of me joining Westbrook Industries in a leadership role, but we decided to keep our professional lives separate. It was important to both of us that I build my own success, not just benefit from his. My mother had met Daniel, approved of him enthusiastically, and was already asking about grandchildren. I'd told her we'd get to that eventually, but we were enjoying being newlyweds first. And Marcus Sterling? His company had declared bankruptcy 4 months ago. He'd been forced out by his board, humiliated in the business press, left with nothing but a severance package and his tarnished reputation. Vivian had indeed left him for the Morrison connection, was now engaged to Thomas Morrison and planning a wedding at, irony of ironies, the Rosewood Estate. Marcus had tried to reach out to me twice, emails I'd deleted without reading. I had nothing left to say to him. That chapter of my life was over. Tonight, though, was about celebration. Daniel and I were hosting a party, the Harper family, my mother, some of Daniel's close friends and business associates. A party to celebrate 6 months of marriage, 6 months of success, 6 months of building the life we both wanted. I was wearing a gold dress that Daniel had bought me for no reason, except that he'd seen it and thought of me. My hair was swept up, the diamond bracelet he'd given me for our 6-month anniversary sparkling on my wrist. Daniel came up behind me as I looked out at the city lights, wrapped his arms around my waist. Happy? He asked. Deliriously, I said, leaning back against him. Though sometimes, I still can't believe this is real. That I actually get to have this life. Believe it, he said. You fought for it. You earned it. We fought for it, I corrected. What, son? This was always a team effort. The doorbell rang, our guests arriving. Ready? Daniel asked. I turned in his arms, looked up at the man who'd started as a business transaction and become my actual husband, my real partner in every sense of the word. Ready? I said. We greeted our guests together, presented ourselves as the couple we'd become. And when John Harper pulled me aside later in the evening to tell me that I should consider running for the board of directors at Harper Industries, that they needed more voices like mine in leadership positions, I felt a surge of pride that had nothing to do with revenge or proving anyone wrong. This was about proving myself right, proving that I was capable, valuable, worthy of success and happiness and love. Later that night, after everyone had left and we were cleaning up together, Daniel opened a bottle of champagne. What are we celebrating? I asked. I have news, he said, pouring 2 glasses. The board approved the expansion into medical technology. We're going into direct competition with the remains of Sterling Ventures. Daniel, I said warningly, I thought we agreed Marcus is done. We don't need to keep going after him. We're not, he assured me. This is legitimate business strategy. The medical tech market is underserved and we can do it better than anyone else. It just happens that it will also completely eliminate whatever chance Marcus had of recovering. That does seem like quite a coincidence, I said dryly. Doesn't it? Daniel grinned. But Emma, I promise, this is the last thing. After this, we leave Marcus Sterling in the dust and we focus entirely on building our future. Deal? Deal, I agreed. We clinked glasses and drank, and I felt the last piece of my old life finally fall away. Marcus Sterling wasn't my fiancé, wasn't my ex, wasn't even my enemy anymore. He was just irrelevant. Can I tell you something? I said. Always. In my lowest moments, in my first life, I used to fantasize about this, about being happy, successful, loved. But I never actually believed it could happen. I thought I'd thrown away my one chance at a good life. And now? Now I know that was never my only chance. I made a new chance. I built a better life with my own hands. I looked at him. With your help, of course. Partners, Daniel said. Partners, I agreed. He kissed me, soft and sweet, and I thought about how strange life was. How I'd been given a second chance I never expected. How I'd used it for revenge and ended up finding something better than vengeance. Actual happiness, actual love, and actual partnership built on mutual respect and shared goals. Marcus had taught me what I didn't want. Daniel had helped me figure out what I did want, and I'd done the hard work of making it real. Come to bed, Daniel said, taking my hand. In a minute, I said. I want to look at the city for a bit. He kissed my temple and went to the bedroom, leaving me alone with the view. I stood there, looking out at New York spreading below me, thinking about the woman I'd been in my first life. Small, scared, losing pieces of herself every day until there was nothing left. That woman had died alone and bitter, full of regrets. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I was Emma Westbrook, successful in my own right, married to a man who valued me, building a life that was mine. In my first life, Marcus had canceled our venue for Vivian's wedding, and I'd accepted it, thinking I had no choice. This time, I'd let him cancel it because I'd already married someone else in Vegas. Someone better, someone who saw me as an equal. I'd reclaimed my story, I'd taken control of my life, and I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's building something so good, so real, so genuinely happy that the people who hurt you become irrelevant. Marcus Sterling was irrelevant now. His opinion didn't matter, his approval didn't matter, his presence in my life didn't matter. What mattered was the life I'd built with Daniel, the career I'd cultivated, the friendships I'd maintained, the future stretching ahead of me, full of possibility. I touched the ring on my finger, the ring Daniel had put there in a Vegas chapel, the ring that had started as a business arrangement and become a symbol of something real. Then I turned away from the window and went to join my husband in our bedroom, in our home, in the life we'd built together. I'd been given a second chance and I'd made it count. And this time, I was going to live happily ever after. Not because some man gave that to me, but because I'd fought for it myself.